Hey, this is Rob. This is episode 52 of the Folly Coffee Podcast. Let's get it brewing. Hello, Luke Peters. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm better now. I'm talking to you, Rob. I miss you.
Okay.
How are you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? I'm not sitting here. This is a Zoom podcast. This has been the first one in a while since quarantine hit, but Luke is based out of LA. And so this episode is going to be a Zoom session, but Luke and I, this is the weird portion of the episode where I talk third person, even though you're on the other end of here, but Luke and I went to college together. He is, what do you call yourself? A comedy writer. You've interned for Fallon. You've done comedy.
Yeah, I'd say an aspiring comedy writer, considering that nobody's doing that right now. And
it's a great year for entertainment.
Yeah, that's right. Good vibes only, as we say in California.
Well, so I'm going to do what I'm sure you appreciate that anyone who learns you're a comedy writer is make me laugh.
Okay, all right. That's a good. That's sweet.
So you're a funny guy, huh? Yeah.
Do you think that? Well, I'm sure this doesn't happen to Kirk Cousins, but do you think if you were an NFL quarterback, people would ever walk up to you and be like, "Throw a ball right now"?
Not this year. I don't think anyone's expecting that out of the year we're having so far.
Fair.
Which I know.
Okay, here's my go-to joke when people say "make me laugh." My uncle actually owns a pumpkin patch. It's pretty tough business. Not that many people need their pumpkin repaired. Oh, come on, you're gonna do it, man.
Wait, what? Wait, listen how long this laughing goes. It really bothers me.
Oh. Is that
still good. Like, who recorded that audio? I was like, no, a couple more seconds.
I think what's disturbing about it is it would make sense if the initial laugh was really hard that somebody was trilling at the end. But like, who is this person that they like laugh a little bit, but a long time?
Moderate laughter, long time. It's what we all go for. But I wanted to have you. Yeah. We kind of caught up a little bit yesterday, just over the phone, and I wanted to talk to you because I find people really interesting. That kind of just like all of a sudden one day you're in Wisconsin, and I'm like, "What are you doing in Wisconsin?" And you're like, "Oh, I got a grant to write, and so I am just fishing every day and writing." And then all of a sudden another day you're like, "Oh, I'm going out to LA." I was like, "Oh, you got something out in LA?" And you're like, "No, I'm going out to LA. It's where I should be." And I find that lifestyle to be more intriguing to me than what a lot of people will do. And so I wanted to catch up and use this as an excuse to catch up on the podcast, but also I think some of the stuff you've done is really cool and catching up on that as well. And so I alluded to it already, but when we were going to school together, you interned for Fallon and then out of college. What's it been like since then? Because that would have been 2013.
Man, it's crazy. I know that's everybody's response to when you say, "What was it like since?" and then they say a date, and then your response is, "Wow, I can't believe it's been that long." But I really can't believe it's been that long. It's been fun. I don't know. I've had a great time, ups and downs, but like it's just like you said, it's fun to go on a different type of journey than I think like a lot of our classmates and maybe a lot of people in like just let's call them finger quote industries do. So yeah, I knew I wanted to pursue comedy and writing, and I had no idea like what that meant or where that would be, or I didn't know what my voice is. I did improv in college and was always trying to be a funny guy, but it's not really something you can get paid to do. You maybe get a free beer every once in a while at certain bars, but that's not really a viable way to live. So after interning at Fallon my junior year, I was like, oh, maybe that'd be cool. Maybe be a New York kind of guy. I don't know what that means. Maybe just go to New York and ride around in the subway or something. And kind of my mentor sort of person that I worked for when I was there, I got on the phone with him one day. He's like, well, I mean, what do you want to write? And I was like, oh, I wish I would have been prepared for that question. I don't know. He's like, maybe you should just take a little bit of time and just do comedy and try stuff out and see what your voice is. Because in my mind at the time, I was like, oh, I'll definitely be like a satirist. Like, oh boy, do I understand politics. And certainly enough to make astute and hilarious comments about them.
People generally go to 22 and 23-year-olds for all their political commentary.
Oh, Yeah, that's the world that you want. That's really funny that you say that too, because I think about what every 23-year-old thinks, and I'm like, oh, it's just so funny that we all like become that way.
Oh, at that age, you're like, I get it now. Yeah, I get the world. I've seen it all, and people need to understand that I get it. I have the solution. I know how this stuff works. People need to listen to me. And now, just at 29, I look at 23-year-olds like, oh my God. Unfortunately, the quote I think most of when I look at myself at 22 or 23 is the Mike Tyson, that like everybody got a plan until you get punched in the face.
That's a great quote. Ah, man, I love that guy. Have you ever seen his show, The Mike Tyson Mysteries?
Yes, he had an animated TV show.
It's so crazy, but I love it. Norm Macdonald plays a pigeon, which is that's a dream role if you can get it.
Mike Tyson's a fascinating character. I was
really interesting guy.
I was listening to some of his, like, I don't even know where I was listening to an interview of him, but it was like when he was 13 years old, the dude that ended up being his boxing trainer adopted him. By the way, one of the world's greatest boxing trainers, also a hypnotist. So he brings in a 13-year-old that happens to be one of the most physically gifted dudes naturally, and is like a hypnotist and like mastered the psychology of an athlete and created Mike Tyson as he is or was when he was world champ. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
It's really cool. Yeah, I didn't really have an experience like that when I was 13, but I was mostly hypnotized. Let's see, 13, you're like 8th grade, freshman year?
Yeah. 8th grade freshman. Because you start driving sophomore year. So, yeah, about 8th grade.
Well, I started driving when I was 8.
Well, you grew up in Wisconsin, so.
All right, I got to get ahead of this because it sometimes bites me in the butt. I'm technically from Northern Illinois, but I have always told people I'm from Wisconsin because in college, I was the only person from Illinois who wasn't from Chicago. So when I'd meet other kids from Illinois, they'd be like, oh, which part of Chicago are you
Wait,
from?
where'd you grow up in Northern Illinois?
Oregon, Illinois.
I didn't know that.
It's been so confusing to explain because then people are like, oh, you're from Oregon or Illinois? I'm like, no, the town name is Oregon. The state is Illinois. By the way, you're not going to have heard of it. But we have a cabin in Wisconsin, and that's where I was doing that grant writing. There's a lot more fishing and bumming around in the woods.
Well, because I had the same thing when you tell people when you go to school out east and you're like, yeah, I'm from Minnesota, people be like, why? You're like, huh? Like, what do you mean? Like, what? People live there? And you're like, yeah. There's like cities.
Were you part of a government experiment? And you're like, no, there's lovely places to grow up outside of Boston.
It's like, so did you farm? Like, no. I mean, I guess technically I know some farm. Never mind. Anyway.
Yes, I'm with you.
So
real quick plug. I'm drinking some delicious Folly coffee right now.
this
nighttime, but I brewed a pot in my percolator this morning. I didn't get to it because I took my puppy, who I've had for 3 days, to the vet, and I'm very tired because that puppy we're on her time, and so I'm drinking my coffee now. And recommend it. It's great.
You've immediately become everything that's worse about a person with a new puppy. Well, we gotta go down for a little bit. We gotta take a nap.
I immediately have adopted the plural and been referring to myself as dad, and that's who I am now. I mean, I've been wearing Hawaiian shirts for like 10 years.
So I was going to say, I think it was kind of already inherent in you, and you just needed a little tiny bit of a tipping point to be able to lean into it hard.
Let's just cut to the chase. What do I want to do? I just want to be a stay-at-home dad. That's like the end goal, and so whatever means I can take to get there. So that's like down the road, but that's all I want.
Wait, that's it. That's an interesting thought experiment. Is like in an ideal situation, what would you end up being?
Oh man, I'm telling you, stay-at-home dad. I'm not really particularly skilled at anything, but I feel like I get fired up and passionate about stuff enough where give me as many kids as we're going to have. And we can figure out whatever we want to do. Everybody's going to be fisher people.
Just get really excited about like decks and like grout, redoing the grout.
Oh man, every summer staying. Yeah. You do chores growing up? Like big chore kid?
What does that mean? It's like
did you just have like chores?
I mean, every kid has chores, don't they? Were you a big chore kid?
Okay, not to sound like old men here, but like I don't know if kids do chores that much nowadays. Like when we lived in Chicago.
Well, that's because it could make them feel
Scared?
I think anxious. I don't like this, and so I feel like if I don't like doing this, then I shouldn't do it because I'm not living my best self.
Oh man, that's a tough concept to have in your brain before you're like 25.
Well, there's so many resources out there that it's easy to.
I'm so glad that we didn't grow up with TikTok and I mean, first off, this is really made me sound like old man. I really think TikTok has been very bad for comedy. I loved Vine. And first off, since Vine didn't work, when TikTok became popular, I was like, this isn't going to work.
And
I don't understand this format of these videos where it's like flashing lights in the background, handsome 16-year-old who's like super jacked and then wearing, like really nice gray sweatshirt. And then they point to a speech bubble here. And I'm like, okay, idea one. They point to speech bubble here. Okay, contradicting idea two. There's a pause. They're staring at the camera. I'm like, oh, here comes a punchline. And then it's just a third statement that's not funny. And then it's like all the comments below are like the smiley laughing face. I'm like, is that what we're doing now? Is
Here's
just jokes without punchlines?
I will argue to the death for TikTok. I am deep in it. Here's the thing.
The ones that are meant to be funny are unfunny. The ones that are funny are hilarious.
Yes. When you... Yeah. The thing that I think TikTok has, I literally filmed I recorded an entire episode of the podcast a while back about TikTok. So all the stuff I said in that hour-long episode is probably now irrelevant because that was 3 months ago. But the thing...
That was pre-ban that didn't happen, then happened, then didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. No, this whole ban stuff. I know I've become associated with TikTok as Folly because when... it was announced that it was potentially banned, I had legitimately like 15 people reach out and be like, hey, are you okay with this? And I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't really care. Like,
that's really why we got into the coffee was for the TikTok.
This is all just a side angle to become TikTok fit. No, but the TikTok algorithm is scary and impressive in the sense that like every single thing, how long you watch it, what you like, what you comment on, it will start showing you more of that. And so when you start it, it's creepy because it's obviously the demographic super young. So you have to very quickly get through the videos where you feel creepy and then just start liking the stuff that you're into. So my feed right now is all like funny stuff and it's like business stuff and coffee stuff is like all my feed is. But
you did it. You won.
Yeah. And so once that algorithm figures out what you like, the thing that scares me about it is that I've not experienced anything where you sit down and all of a sudden it's 15 minutes later and you're like, I don't recall a single thing I just viewed. Nothing. And it was like that 15 minutes is like that. And what you said about like us growing up and avoiding that is I can't even imagine.
Oh man. Because I can remember when YouTube first came out, we went to our friend Andrew's house. And I remember we logged on and we're like, so the idea is there's just videos and we're like, awesome. And then it was before they had like recommended or like top videos, but there's videos on there and you're like, what do you want to watch? And it's like, boy, let's try dogs. And you like type in dogs and the quality of everything was like terrible. And now, I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube now and the algorithm has everything just so like, I'm so tickled with all the things that it knows that I like. It's like, hey, I know you just finished watching this fun video of Aaron Rodgers, and I also know that you really want to see this Russian truck fail video. And I'm like, yes, I do. It's 11:30 at night. Why would I not want to watch that? And it's like, I wish I would have had that when I was 13. Glad I didn't have it when I was 13, though.
Well, and the thing that scares me the most about it is trying to picture yourself at 13 or 14 when already you're so stressed about like what people think about you at school and the clicks. Dude. And then the thing about TikTok is it is a legitimate possibility to go insanely viral like that. Like
the guy, the skateboarding guy with the cranberry juice.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like I already followed that.
Cool
dude.
For that guy.
Yeah, and I already followed that dude. Tom Segura and Christina P. Yeah. Christina P. puts TikToks on her Instagram, and she's been following that guy for like 9 months, and then all of a sudden he has this one video just pop off. And when you're a 13-year-old, that first time you watch YouTube and you see Charlie Bit Me, you're like. You watch Charlie Bit Me and you reference that for a month and then another funny video comes. But now, and you never think, oh, maybe if I make a video, I could be famous. Now that's a
really interesting point.
Now
it did seem really unattainable to like have a viral video back in the day.
It wasn't even a thought.
It wasn't a thought.
It wasn't even a thought.
People are trying to engineer it now. But what's interesting, just popped in my head, it's like, as like a, older 20, whatever, soon to be 30-year-old, now it makes me feel like, oh yeah. And especially like with, I think COVID maybe has added a layer to it of like, now that people are doing shows, like we're doing Zoom right now, it's like, it makes it all seem a little bit more equal playing field. And like with how much viral stuff there is, and like the idea that just some guy or girl or whoever can just like in the middle of North Dakota have a viral video and then be famous. It like really kind of evens the playing field of like everybody's in everybody. But I wonder if you're 13 now, if that makes the stakes even higher of like, well, I want to be famous too, instead of just like being a kid. You know what I mean?
If you're at your school, this is just speculation. It's not like I'm hanging out at too many middle schools these days. But
well, I hope not now, especially.
But if you like legitimately, if you are like an unpopular kid in middle school, or if you're not that popular, if you have one video,
were you a popular kid in middle school, by the way?
Not in middle school. Okay. I think as I grew and just like started lifting weights and became an athlete, I think I like accidentally was like on the fringe of that crowd. But I was in choir, and I was like the honors choir, so it was like this weird thing where it was like I was a 275-pound high schooler, but also like in choir. So I think it was like, I don't know what I think it was the same thing when we went to school. That was like, I was in football, but also in the hockey house for some reason, and then also like in an a cappella group. And so I don't know if popular is the word, but I don't know that I've ever super cared about that stuff. But at that middle school age, you can't help it. And like you could legitimately not only become famous, but become popular at your school. Like if you have an actual number that you can show people that I have this many followers. It's like a Black Mirror episode. That's crazy. But I can't even imagine. But anyway, so how was Fallon? That was crazy, huh?
Yeah, it's so fun. Boy, it's 2011. It's 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Really great. It was especially like so funny to think about it now too. Like, so my hometown, I think it's like 3,200 people now. I think it was like 3,800 when I was growing up. My high school, like 115 kids in a graduating class. And then, we go to Dartmouth where there's 1,000 kids in a class.
Yeah.
I remember like meeting people like, isn't it weird how small it is here? I was like, I mean that the student population is way bigger than my hometown size. Like, so it wasn't like hard to take then. Cause we're in this school in the woods. Like that was amazing. Best setting for school ever. It's so awesome. But the big shock for me was like, all right, yes, in my mind, I will become a comedian, which takes place in a city, a place that I have been to once a year, every year growing up, because the local farmers bureau would get a bus worth of Cubs tickets. You'd meet, everybody get on the bus. They'd give you a sandwich. They'd drop you off in front of Wrigley Field, watch the game, get back on the bus and go home. That was my only relationship with cities before moving to New York. Was still skiing at the time, Nordic skier. Mm-hmm. If anybody's in Minnesota, I was part of the problem, the people with the wheel skis. And I did that in Central Park every night at 8 p.m. So it's so funny to think about the shock of never having been in a city, moved to a city. I didn't know how the subway system worked, so I just walked to the internship the first day, and I think it was like an hour and 40-minute walk. And my brother-in-law gave me a map. This is no joke. It was one of these maps that when you fold it out, it's got like little 3D pop-ups of major buildings and stuff. So like I'm walking around with that, and I just like walk up to this police officer, and I was like, where am I? And I'll never forget the way he looked at me. He's like, where are you trying to go, son? And I was like, the 30 Rockefeller Center. And he was like, all right, just take the whatever train. I was like, no trains. That's a next week thing. I'm walking there. He's like, just go south and then find another police officer in like 20 minutes. And then I got to work eventually. So it's great experience doing that, and just would be around the show all day. I was a research intern, so I was like helping put together packets of like upcoming guests and stuff, and then just doing miscellaneous runs around the city, which is like such a fun way to learn the city. Is to like, go to this fabric shop for whatever this costume run is. And it always take me like 3 hours, and I'd come back and be like, what happened? And be like, well, It's 2011. Smartphones don't really exist yet. It's something we're all going to look back on and not know how we got around. But I also, whenever I would be off the grid part of the city, I just would get so lost. So if it was like in Queens or something like that, just gone for hours and hours. But just was doing that, and then would just be going and watching shows at like UCB and stuff at night every night, and that kind of like fed the bug. Went back to school senior year. I was like, all right, that's what I want to do after college. Which is so funny because that's when everybody's like doing corporate recruiting.
Yeah.
If you're going straight to grad school, like getting ready for all that, and everyone's like talking about all that. And then, I didn't go to any corporate recruiting or anything. I was like, well, I'm just going to really enjoy the year because I know that I need to be working on this quote unquote voice thing. And I think that's kind of my underlying theme is just like, it's for the last 7 years, just really figured out who I am and what it is I want to say. And again, that's almost nothing about politics from a comedic perspective because it's just not very funny anymore.
And so when you got out of college, is that when you did that? When did you do that grant where you were back in Wisconsin? Did you initially move back?
The summer before my senior year, I wrote a proposal. And again, God bless the school for giving me money to live at the cabin. And I knew I was going to want to write a screenplay about fishing. I was like, well, to do research in that, I should probably be fishing all the time. So I was just training for senior ski season and then just exploring all these national parks and stuff all day long. It's amazing, like awesome experience. And then, I wrote a little bit sometimes, not as much as in hindsight. I'm like, why didn't I write every day? And I wrote a little bit every day, but, and then senior year wrote this screenplay. It's taken me a long time to be able to talk about stuff I've written or let alone read stuff I've written because it's just, I don't enjoy looking back on any of it. And the premise of that movie was it's about a guy who tries to save a small town library by entering and winning the pro bass fishing tour. And it's like got some funny moments, but I'll never forget the day that I turned it in, like going back to the house I lived in off campus. We had this huge TV. I lived with a bunch of guys, and we had like an 84-inch or like it's probably like 55-inch, whatever was big at the time. And I remember being like, "Why do we have like nobody ever watched it?" And I was like, "I'm gonna watch the TV." I turn on CMT2 because that was the first thing on, and this movie came on. It was a directed DVD release, and it was I can't remember the name of it. But it's Billy Ray Cyrus and Bill Engvall. And the premise is to save a small town bait shop. Bill Engvall enters the pro bass tour. And it's like to the T of like the bad guy had the same name. There's this whole gag with his license plate saying Baster, which is like, playing words of master and bastard and all this stuff. And I was like, how did I not come across this? And how did I like steal this idea? And that's when I learned like every idea has been had, no matter how like specific you think it is.
Yeah, it's like the South Park joke about the Simpsons that we can't do anything that the Simpsons have already done it.
I don't know how all those guys and girls that write on those shows think of new stuff. Like Simpsons in season 31 or 32 now. It's insane to think about, but yeah, it's just like, I guess the theme there is just like keep at it and always keep having ideas. And even if they've been had, like, if you have a nuance to it, like embrace it.
Well, and I think part of so what year did you end up moving out to LA?
Moved to LA. So I lived in Chicago from 2013 to 2016, and then moved out here like the fall of 2016. Mm-hmm. Claire, my fiance, we were supposed to get married in 2 weekends, but I don't know if people are aware of this. It's not really a good time to have weddings, so we're postponing that until.
Oh, because you guys are fighting a lot? Is that it?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I can't think of anything else.
No, it's
by the time I release this, it's like not a thing, and people are like, "Oh, this
wow, it's really sad that he took that personal shot right there." Yeah. But back then when we made the move out here, again, going back to the theme of whenever I don't really know what to do, I just go fishing. So we hung out in Montana for a month, lived with a bunch of people out there, just gallivanting around fishing, and Claire would be like hanging out, we'd swim and stuff. And it was a good transition from, Chicago was sort of a trial period of, just taking classes at Second City and IO formerly IO. It's closed now, and I heard actually that Second City is for sale now too, because again, like COVID is just like decimated comedy. It's wild.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, Second City is legend, because I was in Chicago at the same time you were, from 2013 to around 15, and Second City is like basically like a machine in the comedy world. There's so many SNL people come out of there. Like Farley came out of there. It's just, when you go to shows at Second City and you're looking at the walls of people who used to be there, it's basically like so many of the huge players that end up on SNL and some of these major improv comedians.
And so many great writers like Colbert and Tina Fey. And it's interesting. Like, that's the first time like being in a quote unquote comedy community, and it's like so many funny people, and it's like awesome, and had a lot of failures there, a few minor successes, a lot of failures, but it was like just so fun and a great way to like kind of keep working on that voice. Also, remember we were in that bowling league?
Oh yeah.
So we were in a charity bowling league. Think about this. We were in a charity bowling league. I don't remember having ever paid any money. How was it raising money? And we would often give us like free food and drinks and stuff. Like, how is this for charity? What was the charity, and where was money coming from? Were we part of a Ponzi scheme?
My 2 years in Chicago, I can neither confirm nor deny anything that happened during those 2 years. You were
so busy, dude.
Oh, dude, that was such a fun, crazy time, and
it's so fun.
Yeah, that's one of those times where I was actually planning on moving back to Minneapolis. That's the original Sam Adams job I applied for, and they kind of ushered me to Chicago, and I was like, I don't know if I want to live outside my hometown, but I'll give it a try. It's a couple of years, and maybe I can get promoted back to Minnesota, and that ended up obviously not being the case, but that ended up being just the most fun time because it took me so out of my comfort zone. And
but you crushed it. I remember, so fun. Again, going back to like having a little bit of a non-traditional path. It's always just such a pleasure, like going to these random awesome bars. And I will say that's one thing I miss about Chicago is every building is a bar. And we'd be like, you'd be like, hey, you want to hang out on Sunday? And we'd like go to this bar and be like, it's a sweet place, and you'd have these awesome relationships with the staff, and they'd be like giving us, free beer.
Yeah, the corner bar around from my place with Lupe, the bartender.
Yeah, that was
we just sat there for like 5 hours watching football and just hanging out with Lupe and drinking every single beer they have on the menu. And I went back 2 years later. Again, if anyone has known me for a period of time knows that I look radically different about every 18 months, whether it's gaining 80 pounds, losing 80 pounds, different, whatever. And so I had like lost a bunch of weight. I had a mustache, and I walked in just
great mustache.
And I was
great mustache.
I was like, there's no way. I wonder if anybody still works here that was working there. And either way, they probably wouldn't remember me. I walked in immediately. Lupe was like,
that's sweet, dude.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I loved about Chicago. It is a major metro city. It's a huge city, but it has
that big town.
Yeah. It has that Midwestern appeal to it.
That was great.
What was it like moving out to LA from Chicago?
Man, it's been a treat. We really like it here. So, being from like a little farm town, and Claire's from a little town outside of Boston, which is also a little farm town. It's just the types of farming are a little different. It's not just corn and corn products where she comes from. It's like 5 sheep and maple syrup products, which I love, and I miss that so much about New England. But we were both like, let's move to California now. It's something so different than either of us ever experienced. And it's so funny because like all the people that I knew that had moved out here before me that I like had met in comedy, I shouldn't say all, like there's so much jadedness and like anger in comedy. And I go through periods of it too, but we all want to be super famous and funny or whatever the end goal is. And again, I think for me, it's maybe to be a funny dad, working on it. And, so we would hear from us, be like, oh, LA's terrible. It's like you just sit in your car all the time. Everybody's really fake, blah, blah, blah. We've found it to be a lovely place to live. It's like everybody here is happy because the weather is nice. If you meet, like, if you're out on trails, and by the way, and again, this is my podunk. I know nothing about the world. Let's jump into it. I had no idea there's like mountains out here. It's amazing. So like as we like drove down the like around the San Bernardino into the mountains, I was like, oh, I thought it was just like a parking lot everywhere. We like are on trails every weekend. We're like, you can have like legit like 10,000 foot peaks in some of these places. And it's like, oh, this is nice. I'm glad that this worked out. So in terms of a place to live, it's great. Well, it's a little bit difficult now with the whole thing with the whole state being on fire, but
well, on fire, and then everything else. Yeah, California seems to be the most radical about COVID and closing everything down to an extreme.
Yeah,
but
we're like all being really good, and it just keeps getting worse. It's like I don't know anything, I guess.
Well, I think part of the thing about the jaded factor of LA is it attracts a certain type of person who...
Oh, and there's a lot of that type.
I would have to imagine it attracts a certain type of person that's like, no, I deserve to be famous. The only reason I'm not famous is because people haven't found me yet. So I just need to go to the city where people find me, and then once I'm in that city, I'll get found, and it'll happen really quickly. And we talked about this a little yesterday while we were just catching up, that it's everybody sees someone who's famous and thinks, or, you know, famous or well-known, or in any industry, it doesn't have to be just comedy or just acting or anything, that you see someone who's successful and you go, oh, it just happened at one point. It just one day, and there are, you know, you hear the stories of someone who gets discovered out of the blue, and it does happen, but those are the outliers. The reality of it is most people have been plugging away at it and just eating shit for years and years and years and years.
Oh, can we swear?
I don't care. I mean,
heck yeah.
What am I gonna do? Get fired? But it's like people. The idea of an overnight success is like, well, it's overnight to you, but the amount of work and looking back on stuff and being like, wow, that was bad. I don't like my old stuff, but it's like you have to do all that crappy stuff for it to work. And
oh, for sure.
I think so many people look at something like they probably move out to LA. They've been there for 2 years, and then they're like, oh, this place is garbage. I'm not famous yet. And you go,
where's my mansion?
Yeah, and I love hearing the stories of people like Rodney Dangerfield, where the dude was like, he was like a window salesman or something, just like a job that he hated until he was like 60, and 60 is when he became famous. Yeah, and you just hear these stories of people that like, I referenced it yesterday, that it's like in the stand-up comedy world, it's like, most people don't even consider you like a real stand-up until you've been doing it for 10 years. And that's wild for someone to hear, especially when you talk to that 23-year-old version of yourself and you're like, you're not good. Like you have what it takes to possibly be good, but you're 23. Your perspective is nothing.
Yeah, it requires life experience. And, I think you're hitting so many great things on the head. I do think that like, social media does paint the picture like, well, you can have the overnight success because you can, but also like, what is it? Let's just talk like money. Like, what is it worth? Like, going back to South Park, there's that great episode where they meet all the YouTube people who are like, and this is before people were like making actual money on YouTube, and they're like, I have 1 million YouTube dollars or whatever it was. And it's like, yeah,
it's like Tazon Day with Chocolate Rain.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, man, that's a throwback. So, you know, I think that there is an illusion of like overnight success and what that is, but the two things are like, what is your definition and picture of success is one thing, which is a funny thing to say, because I think a lot of the times some people, myself included, will do it like, well, maybe my version of success is a lesser version of success because I have been down lately, but it is evolving. And I just think it's all about life experience, and like, especially in writing and comedy, like having something to say is definitely important. Also, having had unique life experiences is really important. And that's one thing. It's like everybody's having such similar experiences in this sort of like online space in a way where it's like, well, I enjoyed like my story of learning to drive when I was 8, driving on an actual road for the first time when I was 9, and then driving on the highway for the first time when I was 11. Like, I'm really glad I had that experience. Statute of limitations is up. I don't think I get in trouble for that. But like, I don't know. It took me a while to like realize like, no, it's okay that I like had a pretty podunk growing up and have had weird experiences. Like, they're the most valuable thing for me in terms of what I value comedically and also like making me who I am. So I've had a lot of that in the last 7 years, and like LA has been a delightful version of that, of Claire and I having had some crazy quintessential California experiences that have been super fun.
You were telling me about the person you lived with when you moved out there at first.
Yeah. So we lived with a lady off Craigslist, as one often does, and as one never experiences success with.
By the way,
that's not fair.
I did not realize that it was like a crazy thing to live with somebody off Craigslist, because that's what I did in Chicago. And I told someone, I was like, "How'd you meet your roommates?" I was like, "I don't know, found them on Craigslist," and they're like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Is that not what people do?"
It's the thing is, like, you had a good experience with it. I know some other people that have, and I just know so many people that have had terrible experiences. And it's like, I guess that's what often happens, but we live with a wild, I'll be polite and say it was definitely different. Our cats were on a raw food diet because that's what lions eat in the wild. And as we all know, a house cat is just a small lion, right? There's no differences there. Mm-hmm. So it'd be all this raw turkey all over the house, and it has to be warm because, as she alleged, cats, they only eat warm stuff. Even though in my experience with outdoor stuff, I think the way like a mountain lion eats is they kill stuff and then they stash it and come back to it. I wasn't going to bring this up. This is oftentimes in California, you find that people are interested in
you weren't going to mount
listening.
You weren't going to mount your jungle lion knowledge against her.
Well, actually, ma'am. But and then she said that she had ESP and would talk with the cats, and that one of the cats was a spirit of a cat that has followed her whole life. And it was 17 years old, this current iteration of the cat. This is really, it's sad, but it was really
well. But that's what
funny.
She wrote in the Craigslist ad, and you responded.
Yeah, it's like seeking spirits to transfer cat into, or seeking bodies to transfer cat spirit into.
And then you saw the rent, and you're like, "Well, that rent, you bet you bet your ass I can read a cat's mind."
The LA spin is like, well, I might get murdered, but the location is really hard to beat.
I fear for my life, and there's raw turkey meat everywhere. But look at the view.
This one cat was 17, and she's like, I would never keep him alive unless I knew it was his time to go, and I'll know because he'll communicate it to me. And no joke, when this cat would meow, I swear it was just straight up articulating the word "ow." Like it would it was so brittle and decrepit, and like walk around and be like, "Ow, ow," and I'd be like, "Ooh, that's a human speak for I'm in pain."
I don't have ESP, but that cat is telling me it might be the time to go.
So we lived with her for a while. Actually, it's really funny. Again, I don't know how you're supposed to like talk about people. We don't have a relationship with her now. We don't see her. She was pleasant enough. It just wasn't ideal for a couple that's been dating for 5 years at that point to have roommates again. But we also live with this guy, who, again, this is like our first month in LA. She had another roommate who was also a Craigslist guy, and we didn't meet him. We met her. She was the homeowner. Really nice house, by the way. And she's like, "Oh, we're living with this guy, and he's a pastry chef model." And I was like, "I'm so excited to meet this person. Like, what does that mean? That's so cool. It's so interesting."
Wait, so he is a pastry chef and a model, or is
yeah? And she's like, he's a model. He's on a visa, and he has to be a pastry chef. But like he's an aspiring model. And in my mind, I was like,
I was picturing a hyper niche of a model specifically for pastry.
Yeah, he's got the head shape that's perfect for those paper hats that chefs wear. But so she's like, yeah, he's got a visa. He's a pastry chef, but he's an aspiring model. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I've heard everybody in LA is like a model, attractive wise. By the way, that's largely true. There's a lot of attractive people out here. So we meet this guy, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is by far the most attractive human being I've ever seen in real life. And he'd walk around with his shirt off. Thank him. I thank him for it every day. It was amazing to look at. Shape, beautiful triangle shape. And it was like a really confusing storyline. He was French, and he didn't have bad English, but his accent was very thick. And our paths would very rarely cross, even though we had a shared bathroom. But we just like never saw him. And I would be like, "So, like, you're a chef?" And he's like, "Yes, my hours are like, I start the 4 a.m. shift 3 days a week, but I have to be in at 3 a.m. And then I was like, oh my gosh. But then he's like always at the gym. And it's like a weekend. I just like didn't see him anymore at all. And then a week after that, we lived in this house for like 2 months. It's like 2 weeks in, I see him again. I was like, hey, where have you been? Are you just like at work all the time? He's like, well, I have a girlfriend, and we're moving in together. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I know that you got to America about 2 weeks ago, but you have a girlfriend, or like 3 weeks, however long he had been there. Maybe he was there earlier than us. And so he was like, yeah, my girlfriend and I were maybe buying a house together. I was like, buying a house? Like, what? How much does pastry cost nowadays? And it's this whole story that just like made no sense to me. And then one day he just like moved out early. He broke his portion of lease, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess he just really had to get out of here. Flash forward to like, I guess maybe a year ago. I'm like, I don't remember what I was doing. And Claire never says things. You're like, oh, you can maybe see her in the background. Hey, Claire. Just perked up because it's our, Rob says hi. This is our fun LA experience story that we share with people. And she texts me one day. She's like, you have to come home right now. I was like, what's wrong? Is everything okay? She's like, just come home. I have to show you something. It's on TV. Everything's okay, but it's going to change things. I was like, all right. And I come home. And have you ever heard of this show called Selling Sunset?
Yes.
So the guy we lived with was named Romaine, and he's the really handsome guy that the one lady marries, who's like a 24-year-old model. And it turns out Romaine was in fact a model, and the woman that he met was because he was filming the show that he's like pretty famous for now and a cast member of. And no, he was like 24. She's like, I don't know, she's in her 30s, but he's like 22. And so it's just like so funny because in my mind, I was like, what is this far-fetched story this guy is telling me? And it turns out he lives in this mansion. He's a really successful model. She's like this power resale.
For every one of those you hear where you're like, this guy's crazy. This is so sketchy. And then you move out to LA and you're like, this never happens. And then sure enough, the one guy that says he's a model is actually like hugely famous now.
And it's also funny because it's like, it's such a specific type of show that I wouldn't watch if it weren't for Netflix in the state of like, it shows you the things that are awesome.
Yeah.
And people like this show. And so when I tell people a story now, it's just so funny when people are like, you live with Romaine? So I live with Romaine, if anybody knows who that is, when that was going on. He's a great roommate. He looks even better in real life than he does on the screen.
I don't know who
Romaine, if you're watching the podcast, you once recommended a haircut to me, and it was way too expensive, but I wish I would have gone with your barber.
I don't know Romaine, but it's a delightful type of lettuce, so I'll just assume he's a good guy.
So that was our like. We've had these just wild experiences in LA that we're thankful for. So again, sorry to ramble and jump all over the place, but then I worked on a movie, was on set just like as a set PA, worked for the Jim Henson Company, which again is like a dream come true. One of my best buddies, we met at IO in Chicago. He's also, he's killing it out here. You'll see his name on writing credits for shows soon, but he's like, oh, we need an extra PA. Are you doing anything right now? I was like, no, I just live with raw cat meat, but yeah, I would like to come work. So that was like my first gig in Hollywood, just working on a movie, Vanity Fair's worst movie of the year in 2018. It's called The Happy Time Murders. It was so fun to work on. It's a hard R
reference that in the show notes. Happy Time Murders.
It is,
worst movie.
I think there's actually a small clip of me on screen at the end of the movie, which is surely an accident, but like in the credits and they're showing like background stuff, I got caught in one of the scenes. So that was sweet. Met a bunch of awesome people who've worked on like all the greatest puppet things that we all grew up with and all still love. And then, so from there I was like, ooh, man, this is great. What's the next steps for me in Hollywood? And this is something that I actually didn't move to LA for right out of school. Cause I was like, at that time, again, going back 23-year-olds and everything, 22-year-olds especially. And I was like, I don't want to have to like start like an agency or like do this whole mailroom thing that everybody does in Hollywood. And then I did it at 26. It was a great experience. Started the mailroom at a company called 3 Arts, which is a management production company. It's done a bunch of shows that we all love and have grown up with, and did the whole thing. Was the mailroom guy, then was a floating assistant, was an assistant, then eventually became an assistant for one of the partners of the company. And it was like such an awesome way to learn about the business side of Hollywood. And did that for I was at 3 Arts for a year. And then from there, I transitioned to working on an upcoming HBO show that's not out yet, and we're on hiatus because we were on hiatus before COVID, and then COVID hit, so we don't really know what the status of the show. But it's been a fun way to like move to LA, start from ground zero. Like I was, nothing from anything I've done in my life before then transfers over here, and it's been fun to like start from the ground up again. And I guess my long-winded point is like, you sometimes just gotta start anew, and the things you've done in the past, although they don't have like tangible credit here, like my worldview has been so helpful in all these experiences. So who knows where it goes next? Am I right?
Well, yeah. So with this HBO show, were you like in the process of filming, or where was that at when all?
So we were just a writer's room. I was writer's PA, so I was low man on the totem pole in terms of a writer's room, but it's like, it's the best job ever. Just hanging out with writers, helping, I did, coffee runs every morning. We were on the Sony lot in Culver City, like walking, which is like where Wheel of Fortune and stuff is. Super fun walking around, and coffees, lunches, miscellaneous errands. But then, I got to meet like real deal awesome writers and a bunch of incredible people. And it was a great experience, and hopefully that comes back. But if not, like, hope to transition to another writer's room and then eventually be in it someday is my goal.
Yeah.
LA's been really fun. The ocean is a very scary place to me. That's where sharks and octopuses live, but working up my courage to go in there more. Sorry to do a hard transition, but I've literally seen the ocean twice.
I was going to say, okay, were we talking about the ocean? What did I just miss? There's water out there. It's way bigger than other water that I've seen.
Yeah, but here's an argument I try and have with people that is not interesting to anybody is the Great Lakes are oceans.
Pretty much. Yeah, you don't see the other side.
You can't see across it. It's too deep.
But still, I think the knowledge that there's not sharks in there, it changes the feeling behind that water completely.
There's got to be something that lives in Lake Superior. It's so deep and it's so big. I want
to. Like, is that the end of your sentence?
This is not a bit. My whole life.
It's deep. It's big.
Like, there's still shipwrecks in it every year. Like, there's got to be a monster that lives in there, right? It can't just be lake trout and walleye.
I guess it's true. I feel like there's not even like really like a Bigfoot story about Lake Superior. There's not like a Loch Ness Monster version for the Great Lakes, which is kind of surprising when you do think of the sheer size of those lakes, that there isn't more of like urban legends that exist. But I don't know. I've never even heard of like spottings with the Great Lakes, whereas anything else, I don't know.
There's got to be though, right? Like,
there's kind of got to be.
If there's a Bigfoot, which I don't know, maybe there is. I'm open-minded. Well, hey, if there's aliens or whatever
the government low-key announced that there's aliens and UFOs. Like they announced during all of this that there are unidentified objects not of this earth that they've discovered, and people just like let that be a line item on the news. Like recently, did you see this?
Yeah, we have so much other stuff going on. People like, aliens, but we got.
How is that like the third line item for like a day and a half on the news cycle? The government announced that there are objects not of this earth that they've discovered that they can't explain, and we're all like, but there's an election in 3 months, and it's like,
why didn't this change our paradigm of reality when we found out that there's aliens?
I need more follow-up information here. I need to know, like, well, do we know where it came from? And it's like, no, case counts. It's like, okay, but like there's aliens? It's like, yeah, but that's not what we're talking about right now. That one, they found out the perfect time to sneak it in. Then 5 years from now, when the aliens visit, they're going to be like, yeah, we told you about this 5 years ago. What's the big deal?
To be fair, the aliens could very well be here just walking around, and we would never notice them because we're all looking at our phones all the time when we're walking around.
Yeah. I mean, and the likelihood that aliens, if they were going to visit, the likelihood is that they already have. And there's something that happened in Egypt that I think we all kind of know. I
like that. They say the Egyptians had electricity. The ancient Egyptians. I believe the current Egyptians will have electricity.
The thing that freaks me out the most is, so it's like you look at our civilization and you go, this is just this civilization will last forever. And you're like, actually, every single civilization that's ever existed in the earth has crumbled at some point. So who's to say we knew if everything in our society right now collapsed today? If there was a single solar flare far and away scares me the most out of anything.
More than Yellowstone eruption?
Yeah, because if that happens, we die. And then it's like, we're just dead.
Yeah, it's scary.
You're dead, and then it's done, and you don't.
Wait, would we all be, or wouldn't it be a bunch of people would be immediately, and then it'd take a lot longer for everybody else to die, right?
Well, that's true. I guess that would still suck, but you wouldn't have long. A solar flare, what that does is it's basically a giant EMP. It wipes out all electronics, and okay, if electronics were wiped out permanently, you could never put it back on the grid. We would never see each other ever again in our lives. There's family.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There's family members that are 10 miles from here that I might not ever see because we don't have a plan of, hey, if there's an EMP, let's all meet at this location one day after the disaster.
That's pretty wild to think about.
So you continue to live with 99% of people you've ever met. You'll never see them again, and that's the thing where I'm like, that is way more scary than any other doomsday scenario to me, because it's like you're still alive, but everything resets. And if there's one thing that COVID has shown me like a sliver of is how fragile society. That period where people were ransacking toilet paper, which
I forgot all about that. It seems like 10 years ago.
And like toilet paper was the first thing that people thought of. Like, you're worried about the cleanliness of your behind versus out of everything that's happening right now. That's your first thought is gotta go load up on toilet paper. I was like, if people reacted that way to something that, by the way, doesn't even affect the supply chain, like if the food supply chain was not affected by this, if someone's going to react that way, imagine in a real scenario where like if power in the grid goes down.
Yeah, it's pretty freaky. We'd be so screwed in LA. I think about that all the time.
By the way, if you're talking about the YouTube algorithm, this is where mine leads me, where you click on the one thing, and then all of a sudden you get one more doomsday, but then you start to get to the people that you go, oh shoot, this guy, he's got a good point. And so, if you're wondering if I've talked to close people,
are you saying you're a prepper, dude?
I'm not. That's I'm not at all.
I once was. I worked with my dad on a project for a year when I was doing, comedy stuff at night and taking classes and, trying to be somebody in Chicago. And then I helped my dad with this project it's like we presented an ag symposium. It's like about the best types of barns for cattle, which I guess I know about that now. But my dad's a big guy in the cattle industry, so I grew up around it. And I was making video models of different buildings with drones. It was pretty fun. But we were at a hotel in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and it was like a hotel bar. And I was like, I'm going to go down. We don't have anything else to do. I'm sitting there, and this guy's sitting next to me at the bar. Yeah, it's like a medium nice hotel. Sioux Falls is a nice place. And this guy's sitting there. I had drinking a beer. And he's got a glass of wine, which I noticed. And I was like, no, I guess some people go to bars and drink wine. And, some game on. And this guy just like out of nowhere is like, what do you small talk starts. What are you doing in town? Oh, we're here with my dad. Oh, good. Okay. What do you do? Oh, well, I'm an aspiring comedian, but I work with my dad. I had a lot of odd jobs, kind of keep paying the bills, whatever. He's like, oh, okay. You and your dad pretty close? Yeah. Yeah, me and my sons are pretty close. We actually have a family doomsday plan. I was like,
see, okay, that's why I'm not that person, because that person, that's their entire that's the trouble of it, is the second you start to think about that too much, it consumes everything.
But here's the thing, this first off, I was like, it's like CrossFit. If you do it, you talk about it. I mean, as a puppy owner, I guess I do that now too.
Yep.
But like, no part of our conversation was going that direction, and he brought it up, and I was like, I'm digging into this because I like to know about people. He keeps a bathtub full of water at any given time.
Yep.
And he not recycles it, he drains it and fills it again every 3 days. I wish I could remember I have it written down in a journal somewhere, but he had like a nuts amount of gasoline in a tanker in his shed, like an amount that most farms don't have.
Yeah.
And like evacuation plans of where everybody goes. in the back of every person in their family's cars, all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. But what's kind of cool about it to me is he was like it's something insurance, middle tier, one of these like nice, suburb of Minneapolis places where he probably has a very nice life, but behind the scenes, he's ready for it. He's ready for it to hit the fan, which I guess is cool. I don't know.
If all electricity were to go away, the place you want to go to is the Hoover Dam, because that will be the last man-made structure.
Because you can run vacuums off it.
That's the last place that will continue to produce electricity without human interaction. Or maybe that was if all humans disappeared, what would happen? That was a different rabbit hole I went down. Anyway.
So if all humans disappear, you're saying that we should go to the dam as ghosts?
Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that one. But the Hoover Dam would produce electricity for 10 years without anybody doing anything to it, which I found fascinating. But I now realize...
That's like a Bill Belichick defense. It just always remains in place producing.
No, but the thing we were talking about yesterday that I found really interesting, and one of the things that I've kind of learned too is... I think when you're younger, there's all these pressures of you see a lot of people our age going on the traditional career path, and especially at like the age of like 24, 25, you start to kind of even subconsciously compare like, oh, well, shoot, if I'd done this, if I'd done that, I could be at this point.
JD, MD, MBA, pick one.
Yeah, and especially... Like, I mean, I went through this hard when I was living with my parents for 2 years. And that first year, there's lots of days and weeks where I'm just like, is this thing ever going to take and whatever. But going back to the stand-up comedian things, it's ironically hearing stand-ups talk about their career, I'd pull a lot of comparisons to that it's like all these businesses that you go, man, that's overnight success. For every one of those, there's hundreds of thousands of others that it's just grit. And I think that's one thing that I really like, that you don't think of it in terms of like comedy writing, or you think of it more with like the business entrepreneurial side. But I think a lot of people who end up being successful in their industries, regardless of what they are, just people with an insane, like my favorite word in the English language is relentless. It's just like the people that you look at people and you just go, that person is relentless. Like I know that person, it doesn't care what happens to them, they're going to keep going. And it's like that type of thing.
That's very much you, by the way. It's always been you.
Well, and it's you too, because it's like there's so many things that could happen that would be disheartening, and being
there's been a lot.
Yeah, being 26 and having to go back to a mailroom a lot of people would not do that. They just wouldn't do that. They go, I can't be 26 in a mailroom.
You know how funny it was, by the way, being a 26-year-old in the mailroom and then having 20-year-old interns at our office and seeing the ways they thought that they were better than everybody. And it was funny because they do it in a way now where I'm like, oh, these kids are idiots. But also then, immediately it was not lost on me. Like, wow, I was definitely that intern at times when I was interning at Fallon and other places.
And you almost have to be like a certain level of delusional about where you're going with things, because when you try to tell people, well, this is what I want to do long term, so few people are able to make it to the level that you might be aspiring towards, that people look at you and go, yeah, maybe consider something else. Or like, are you sure? I mean, for me, it
used to make me so mad when people would say that. And I you get over it. But I remember when I was like, I worked as a Finnish carpenter, not Finnish like from Finland and being tall, but like, I did like framing or whatever. Like not framing. I wasn't a good carpenter. Okay. I'll come and get ahead of it. But I worked for that was a great job. I worked for, he was my landlord, and then he became my friend in Chicago, and he owned a custom design build company. Jacob Shapiro, great guy. And when I was like struggling, this is like my first like odd job out of school. Awesome. Learned a lot of good dad skills there. But oh shoot, I forgot where I was going with that.
That's cool.
Gonna be a point.
Anyway,
that was a bummer. Sorry, derail whatever you're saying.
Anyway, the way I look at it is that every single person that approaches you and goes, maybe you should reconsider.
Oh, it was then. Sorry.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Yep.
It was like when people like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a carpenter and a comedian. People like, what do you think you're going to do after that?
Yeah. Like,
how long do you think you'll do that for? I'm like, ouch, but I'm not really worried about that. I'll get there.
Yeah, but I think that stuff used to really bother me when people would be like, coffee? Like, are you sure? Like, there's a lot of coffees out there already. Have you heard of Starbucks? Like, how are you gonna? What's different? What are you doing different? What is this and that? And it kind of was disheartening at first, but the way I was able to change my perspective on it, that kind of is almost like, instead of pissing me off and making me angry and get pissed off at the world, it almost like refuels me, is that every time someone comes to you, or every time someone comes to me and is like, are you sure maybe you should reconsider? You have to imagine that every single person who's ever been successful has faced the same thing. And the way I look at it is, I go, every time someone approaches me and says, are you sure maybe you shouldn't do that? That's also happening to someone else who's in the same position. And for every time I ignore that and continue to work hard at what I want to work at, there's another person out there that probably will listen to that person and go, you're right, I'm going to reconsider. Especially in something like comedy, where it's like such a long process. And it is, to the layman, like the average person, if you tell them I'm trying to be a comedy writer, they go, oh, okay. But for every comedy writer out there that's in your position, there's people telling them, are you sure? And every single time they get asked, there's another person that's going to get knocked out in the process. And it just continues to refine what you're doing. And for every time you ignore that and almost let it refuel you, there's another person that's no longer a part of the picture. And so part of it, by sticking around longer, is just like a series of arbitration, that there's less competition the longer you do it too. And the competition that does pop up is not going to be as experienced as you, and you face more. So that's the way I look at it, that it's like all these times that you get doubters facing you, you go, there's nobody successful that doesn't anybody that pursues something that's a little ridiculous is going to have people tell them that they probably should. Yeah. And so that's why I love what you're doing. Well said. That's why I love what you're doing. And like, I just want to amp you up all the time, because it's like, dude, look, 10 years from now, okay, we're going to be 39. We're going to be 39-year-olds that are like, oh, wait. Yeah.
Wheels for feet, wings. I imagine technology will have gone a long way by then.
No, but like, we'll be 39-year-olds, and I have to imagine, if it's any of the way I feel about aging right now, that at 39, we're going to be like, dude, I wish we knew how not old 39 is. And there's people out there that get to 30.
That's awesome. That's a really wise perspective.
Oh, man, there's people that get to 39 and they've realized that they've laid out their entire life plan. And like, how boring is that? And I'm sorry for anybody that may find themselves in that scenario, but like, that is part of why I'm doing what I'm trying to do. But also, that's my biggest fear, is at the end of the day, it's like, a lot of people don't start their passion until they're 39. So let's say you find yourself in that scenario. I think a lot of people measure themselves against what they think they should be doing. And
that's a great point.
Yeah. And the way I started to look at it is, I go, wait, who is telling me it should be done that way? And why are they doing it? And very rarely, when I ask those two questions, who's telling me I should be living this way? And then you ask why, very rarely does that why question create an answer that I go, oh, I should be listening to them. Usually I think it's somebody's reflection of their own life, that they're trying to inject their own worries or their own insecurities into what you're doing.
And we do that so much in comedy too. Everybody wants to be like, well, so-and-so did this by this age. I've been super guilty of it a lot in my life too.
It's impossible not to.
Yeah, whatever. So I'm also not going to be, so-and-so because I'm a different person.
I was talking.
And it's like so easy to forget that.
I mean, I was talking to another entrepreneur who I super respect, that I look at him and be like, this guy's insanely successful. And he's like, God, I'm turning 30 next month, and I never made the 30 under 30 list for Entrepreneur Magazine. And I was like,
you did so much.
I was like, wow, no matter what position you're at, you can always look at something and be like, I should be here. And that shifting your perspective and just looking at things differently can change how you. I mean, I'm getting like super on the pedestal here, but it's like, I think if one thing has happened with COVID is it's made me sit with my own thoughts, because this year is not at all what we were expecting it to be. And this, quite frankly, with Folly, was like, this is our year. We've got things in place and we're about to ramp up and really punch it through the roof. And it's made me kind of evaluate, well, what is success, and why am I disappointed at the results of this year when there's so many things we're proud of that we've done this year? And I realized I was like, oh, it's because the arbitrary numbers that I put in place is not where we're at.
Man, you said so much great stuff. Well, first off, it's so great to like, I don't know. I'm not trying to be political, but it's like, it's important to accept that part of this process is that there are compromises and losses and certain things that need to stop. And like, you have to move goals and guidelines. Well, we shouldn't move guidelines. Turns out that's maybe the reason that we're postponing stuff longer and longer. But my point being, like, yeah, it sucks. Name somebody who isn't like having at least a delay, let alone the terrible effects that are happening this year. And it's good to like to not be too hard on yourself, but also to like use it as a period of analysis and like, well, this was going to be the year, whatever. When we go back to it, it will still be the year. And I won't have just pressed pause and made no progress until then. I will be, refining my ideas, keeping the business moving, like whatever it is. And like, it's good to do that instead of just be like, yeah, well, either it's not happening or it is happening. You know what I mean? Like it's so good to take that step back and be able to do so. And again, who knows if they're now like, man, we're so stupid. We thought we were able to look at stuff then, but
I'm sure we'll look back at this and be like, I can't believe I thought I knew what I was talking about at all. And that's how I always view myself at this point, because like I went through a period where I thought I was that guy. I thought I had it figured out at 24 and like, I'll just whatever. But I think if you always approach life that you're like, I legitimately don't know completely what I'm doing at all times, but I'll work really hard. And as long and yeah, that's a conversation I had with Jeff, that I was like, if you ever are worried about calling me out on something, always keep in mind that I'm not really sure what's going on. Like I said this pre-COVID, and I do feel like this has proven my point a little bit. I was like, Jeff, everything's made up, not just with Folly, but everything. I was like, every single rule that's ever been made, someone made.
Imposter syndrome, man. We all have it. And it's like, there's no way to be, you just got to do whatever it is. Like we all set these barriers, and it's like, just get rid of them and just do your thing, And
that's been one cool thing about this podcast is I've had some guests that like I look at and I'm just like, wow, can't believe I'm sitting across from you right now. Like, this is crazy that we're talking. And you realize that they have the same thoughts, and that the people that you look at that you go, they've got it figured out. They don't have any of these thoughts. They don't have these doubts. That it's like, no. But then on the flip side of that, you also realize that you go, oh, this person is 10 years ahead of me in terms of how long they've been working in the industry. And there's the general takeaway I get from a lot of these conversations I have is it's very rarely like some secret formula or some secret thing that they figured out. It's like, no, I just continued to get better at what I did. And
just doing it.
It catches up with you, that if you work really hard at something, you legitimately care about it, and you're being genuine in what you're pursuing, like that combined with just the amount of time, it's going to get out. And it's like, so that's kind of like my whole soapbox thing, but it's kind of,
it reminds me of a quote one of my high school ski coaches had, which is racing or training doesn't make a racer, racing makes a racer, which meant nothing to me at 16, but it's like, it's just so much deeper to me now, where it's like, you just got to get in there and do the thing a bunch, and eventually it'll work if you keep doing it. Like you just got to get the reps in, and it's not just like talking about something you want to do or like thinking about what you want to do. Those are important things, but it's like doing what you want to do. Just do it,
Yeah.
Which would be a great, like if you had imagine if that was like a company slogan, like just do it. Do you want that one?
I'll reach out to my trademark lawyer. I
bet you get that for a simple Bitcoin or two.
Yeah, I don't know that my lawyer would be the best person to take that one on, but because I don't even know if he's technically my lawyer. It's the person that I paid to file our trademark.
Was it Bob Loblaw Lawblog?
Bob Loblaw, trademark lawyer. No, but it is interesting that it's like I enjoyed talking to people like you, where it's just like, I think a lot of people they let where they're at and being able to show people where they're at influence their decisions more than like, but is that where I want to go? They value the external validation of look what I've done versus so it's like you almost need to have a long-term vision that people might go, you're a little bit crazy.
Yeah, you got to be comfortable in your skin is a big thing. Oh man, it's so interesting. I think back to and I don't know if you talk about your football career much on the podcast, but you had a very good college football career, and you're like, you're the stud. You're one of the studs. I would say you're the stud. You're always my stud. The moment I said it, I regretted saying my stud. Yeah. But you are my stud. No, but you're like, you killed it. You had a great career. Senior year especially was like really good. I'll never forget, like, we'd get lunch off after, I guess it was after that history class our senior fall. We'd often get lunch. I'll never forget. I mean, what'd you weigh senior year?
I was like 280.
It's just like so much work to have that much weight on it. I remember one time we were at Subway and you got like 2 footlongs, and you're like, I had to eat both. I remember what the exact quote was, but you were like so tired of eating.
Yeah.
And it's like just one of those moments like, oh man, people don't know what it takes to like do the thing. And it's like, in addition to all the work you would do with football, like all that time you would spend eating and extra meals. And it's just like, it's awesome. Like you obviously enjoyed football, but is cool for you in the moments to be like, I'm so excited to be done eating.
Yeah.
And then when your football career is down, like you immediately started to lose a bunch of weight and you just were like so happy. Like, that's just great. You know, when you're playing rugby and stuff.
Walk upstairs and not breathe heavy was an awesome feeling.
Yeah, man. So it's just fun to think about, like, you know, that's sort of the same awareness that you had then that keeps you going forward now of like, yeah, it's what I'm doing, but here's what I want to do. And like, I'm just so proud of you for how things are going.
I appreciate you, man.
Doing what you want to do now.
It's like, at this point, we're like still super, super small. We're almost coming up on 3 years into it.
Great stuff though. I talk about it all the time.
But it's cool because it's like the more work you put into something, it's going to get better. And it might be frustrating, I would imagine, in something like comedy writing, because it's like with coffee, if we're growing, there's numbers, there's tangible things to be able to say we're doing this better, we're doing that, whatever. But with comedy writing, it's kind of like very opinion based. And so what's that like in terms of like, do you have a way of being like, I'm getting better? Or
it's a good point. I mean, I guess the tangible result would be like once I, you know, hopefully get bumped up to staff writer eventually, which is like, there's always different levels. You know, it's funny when you ever watch like TV and you're like, what does a producer do? Like having been in Hollywood and like worked for management production company, the answer is like, I don't know, producer does a million things, but there's all these different names that are just different writing titles. So staff writer is often like technically the intro writer position, and then how that functions is different at different shows. But that's like the tangible results. Like for me, I'd like to I guess have that happen, because then you're a writer and then you go on from there. But in terms of like, before you get that, what's the results like? Just writing, you share scripts with friends and hopefully other writers and get feedback. And then, you take notes and stride, but usually people are giving you good notes, and it just takes so long to like be able to acknowledge like, although I like this scene or I like this joke, it doesn't work here. And I hope that's something I get better as time goes on. But just like, it is a pretty subjective process, but it's just like constantly working on that voice, constantly working on that craft. And you just get a sense of it with like, I don't know, like for me, I'm constantly working on several different scripts or whatever at one time. It's like, sure, most of them, maybe all of them suck, but it's like you put in the time in all of them. And eventually one of them is something that people are like, oh, this is a good one. I want to send this to so-and-so. And that's, usually how the bump works. So,
well, and that's the ultimate that could turn into like, he was an overnight success. His script got picked up. And
but it's like that person was working on the script for so freaking long.
Yeah. Well, in this one script that got picked up, I wrote 20 that were terrible, or 20 that they thought were terrible, and I used something from each one. And
I mean, it's so funny when you find out about how much like these quote unquote success stories of like what their versions of failure and stuff were. And it's like, the Larry David story is one where it's like, he, constantly thought he was getting fired and then did get fired / quit and then just came back. And then my favorite story is like his dreading every year that they would re-pick up Seinfeld, which is like one of the greatest and most funny shows, funniest shows of all time. Not to mention, they all made so much money off it. And I can't remember what exactly it was, but he would always be like so shocked and scared and like, oh gosh, when the network would be like, we're picking you up for another. He's like, how are we going to come up with 26 more episodes of this crap or whatever it is? It's like, it's just fun. The ball's always moving and we're all always really hard on ourselves, but you just have to be honest and take those self-assessments, but just keep pushing through, right?
Yeah. Well, I got a jet. I didn't realize how late it was.
Do you want to see the puppy? Can I hold the puppy up?
Well, obviously.
All right, hang on. I have to take off the headphones for a second.
Okay.
This is our dog. She doesn't have a name yet. She's a corgi, and she's delightful.
That is...
I'm going to show you one fun thing. Hang on. Where's her little hat? This is worth it, I promise.
And this is great because almost all of our...
Hang on.
I know you can't hear me, but this is great because almost no one watches this and almost everyone listens to this. And so right now he is putting a Crocodile Dundee style hat on as well as a matching one fishing cap for the corgi puppy.
Fins.
I recommend you watch that portion of the video if you are not currently watching now. And we're back.
Thanks, everybody. To all our listeners, sorry.
So do you want to know, speaking of delusion, do you want to know why I need to get to bed at a reasonable hour tonight?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're on normal people time. I'm on the best coast, West Coast time.
Nah, everybody knows that.
I'd say best. It's just only good for football. It starts at 10 in the morning.
Yeah, Central Standard is the ideal of
it. It's the right time zone. I acknowledge it.
So this is one of those things that I'm like, it started as a total joke. And then the more I think about it and the more I learn about how like the gears turn, I go, this is still completely delusional if I were to tell somebody that I kind of am starting to actually think this could be a thing. But as anybody who knows me know, I think that Guy Fieri has the ultimate life. I think he is... If you read any story about him, he's...
Fire shirts for a fireman.
He seems to be an incredible person. I obviously have not met him, but everything you read about him, and he goes around and eats and reviews like mom and pop places, like independently owned, just awesome places. And I was like, my ultimate goal is to be Coffee Guy Fieri. All I want is to travel and try coffee and just be like, oh, this is gangster. And so I like have jokingly dropped this to a couple of people. They're like, oh, no, I know him. And I was like, wait, what? Like, yeah, I was on a couple shows and, you know, you just meet through that whole process and it's like, huh? And they're like, yeah, no. And I was like, okay, so how does that process work? And then do you know Chad Hollis?
Chad Hollis.
He's a Dartmouth guy. He played football, but he works at Netflix. And the first time I had the crazy thought, I was like, wait, there are some kind of not amateur, but like clearly not professionally produced shows that got picked up. How did that happen? And so I asked him, he's like, well, usually it's either like somebody with a huge social media following that they get picked up because they already have a built-in audience.
Sure. It's
somebody that is like well known already or famous for what they do, or they have a famous person like back it up and say that you should pick up this show. And so I was like, the way I've always traveled is any new city I go to, I pick out the activities I want to do, but for food and drink, I never pick out places I want to go to. You go to the best coffee shop in town, preferably a coffee roaster because it's my thing, but you go to that shop and you ask the barista, where should we eat and drink while we're in town?
Oh, that's awesome.
And you get the best recommendations because baristas ball
authentic recommendations,
and they ball on a budget, so they're not going to send you to like you ask so many people what's the best restaurant in town, they're going to send you to a place that obviously it's the best because it's $100 a dish. So baristas will like give you these underground like best places, and you always end up having great experiences, and you're not going broke because of it. And I told my parents about it, and they're like, well, we do that now when we travel. And I was like, oh, this is a cool way to travel. And then I was like, there's a show idea here that like legitimately, if you could have like the Barista's Guide be a show where you travel to a new city.
Love it.
You find a barista and you just ask that, you know, you highlight the coffee. And so it's like a coffee show disguised as a travel food show. And that's what I always say about coffee is like the best coffee thing is where people don't know it's a coffee thing. Like I'm going to hit you with some knowledge while distracting you with something else going on over here. And he's like, yeah, so you need like somebody to back it up. And also you need like a 10-minute sizzler that kind of shows the vibe of the show. And I've got a guy that shot a spot for us. And
cool.
I pitched the idea to him. I was like, it's not something I'm sorry, because I hate doing this, but I can't really afford to pay for it. But now I've met a couple people that might actually be able to put it into the right pipelines that if we create a really killer sizzler with like an awesome energy to it, there might be a legitimate possibility of this becoming a thing.
Wow, that's awesome.
And with the goal of just like, let's get people into coffee. So,
wow. So that's what you're working on tomorrow?
We're having the first meeting where we're going to talk through how we're going to work through how to do it and how should we go about it. And like but here's a great example is if the first time I had that thought, and again, this will likely 99.9% not amount to anything. But if the first time I had that thought, I just went, that's stupid, no, that'll never happen. It will never happen. But if you keep doing stupid stuff, something will happen eventually.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so that's kind of how I view it. And I go,
it's a good pitch, by the way.
I pitch it to enough people that they're like,
I'm excited to hear more about it.
The reason it kind of picked up for me is I told enough people when they travel, I go, that's how you should pick your place to eat. That enough people are like, oh, that's cool. So that's what we're working through this Sizzler tomorrow on how we're going to what kind of voice, because Chad said that a huge thing about shows is what voice does it have.
It's all about voice.
The 10-minute Sizzler has to be the voice, and so we're going to try to like, how can we capture a certain voice that's like attractive and different and
you will. I have no doubt.
We're trying to find.
That's such a better pitch than my pitch, which was burritos and baristas. Is where you travel around and you eat the biggest burrito and drink the most coffee each town has, and then you review local bathrooms.
That would be like the YouTube off series where you're there just eating a burrito and drinking mass amounts of coffee, and then at the end of the episode, it's like, and to get the review of the best toilets while we were in town, head over. Actually, that would be hilarious. It would like be its own YouTube offshoot.
I'll ride your coattails when your show actually works. I'll be the little brother show.
Yeah, but it's funny because I think that's it's funny that we're doing this tomorrow because still, I know I'm being delusional. But here's the thing: is every person who's ever got to a point has to be a little delusional about something.
Well, every show pitch is delusional until it gets picked up. Like, until a show is picked up, it's an idea that hasn't worked yet. So like,
and if there's
don't have imposter syndrome about that. Like,
if there's ever been a time to pitch a show, this would be I think it would be pretty low budget. It'd be easy to film. It'd be a simple concept. I'm sure they're not filming many things these days. So
I go on and on about that. That's why I'm hanging out in the apartment all day.
And so I was like, well, if there's ever been a time that someone might say, hey, if you can produce this thing fast, I was like, all right, screw it.
Awesome.
So we're going to try that. But no, man, it was awesome catching up with you. Yeah. We're at like an
really
hour
fun.
20.
If ever you want me back on, I can go long-winded about a bunch of other stuff that's not that cool.
Well, by the time this episode comes out, I think I've got one going up Sunday, and then a week from so this will probably be coming out a few weeks from now. Cool. In theory, our new ad spots will be running with you as our new coffee spokesperson, and I'm excited to get that going. And so hopefully that's something
to work on it.
Yeah, by the time you're on an episode, hopefully some Folly people have seen you pop up and recognize the face before they start.
I'm
watching.
Excited about it.
Yeah,
and in the meantime, if I may do a quick plug, if anybody wants to see any of my stupid musings or whatever on social media, I'm Puke Leaders across the board. It's a nickname that I was given in kindergarten when we learned you could switch letters, and it was funny. It wasn't funny again until college, and then people really liked it, and it stuck. So Puke Leaders on Instagram, Twitter, and then if you want to see some YouTube sketches that I have been a part of, Broom Lady Comedy. It's with two other buddies from Dartmouth who are very funny guys.
Broom Lady Comedy. I will put all these in the show notes so that they can find you.
No obligations. But
what obligations?
But there's lots of puppy stuff on the Instagram, so if you want to see my puppy, you can do that.
I'll check you out, but I'm not here for any obligations. But
the best pickup line of the year.
All right. On that note.
All right, Rob, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy. Hey, good luck tomorrow. Have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is
all ideas are good ideas until we're done. So, pitch everything.
Yeah. And at the very least, it'll be fun. And, and we'll have a cool 10-minute episode to show people about, because we're going to film in the Twin Cities. So I go, worst case scenario, we have an awesome thing to show what we're doing in the Twin Cities and promote some awesome coffee here and promote some people doing cool things. So I was like,
dual values and things. That's really good.
I was like, if that's the worst case scenario of this, that's not a bad way to spend your time. But
yeah,
awesome to catch up with you.
Enjoy. Yeah. And last thing I got to say this, Packers going to win the Super Bowl this year? Probably. It seems so. Good for us.
I mean, at this point, it's like,
there's not going to be a Super Bowl, I don't think, by the way.
Well, and also, what am I going to do? Argue for the Vikings? It's like, yeah, we beat the 0-3, 0-2 Texans, and then their head coach. This is how you know your team is bad, that when you beat them, their head coach gets fired. Like, Bill O'Brien of the Texans just got fired. I was like, that's how you know we're really bad when you beat someone, and they're like, all right, you're fired. You can't get beat by them. And I was like, yeah, I can't really. But Dalvin Cook is killing it for me on the fantasy football front, so I'm all about it.
Cool.
All right, man. So
right.
I'm going to say have a nice day.